Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast in this series, the LabZtorm effect v3. This audio podcast will be in and around the role of endogenous opioids in ischemic preconditioning in IPC in humans, and is part of a storm robotic soliloquy. This audio podcast is part of a storm robotics production, and also where this audio podcast will look at ischemia and vascular injury. So, in brief, ischemia is characterized by a sort of a cessation of aerobic metabolism, B, depletion of creatine phosphate, and in context of creatine phosphate, aligned to where creatine phosphate is part of where there's wherein is part of a high energy which is part of a high energy phosphate. C, onset of anaerobic glycolysis, and D, a buildup of glycolytic products such as for example lactate and catabolites of nucleotide pools in tissues. And in line to this, processes which begin with seconds of ischemia are reluctant resultant upon hypoxia and subsequent loss of aerobic adenine triphosphate or ATP creation, and if long-standing, this then potentially leads to permanent cell damage. The transfer to an anaerobic source of adenosine triphosphate or ATP is compensatory, but still only comprises about 1/4 of the myocardial aerobic glycolytic rate, which eventually ceases after about 60 minutes of reduced blood flow. So in and around this as well, in and around this and around vascular aligned to vascular injury, endothelial cells maintain homeostasis and are vulnerable to ischemic damage. Prolonged hypoxia, so where there's a reduction in oxygen, reduces endothelial cell production of certain bioactive agents. So, for example, prostacyclin, nitric oxide, and stimulates and also stimulates. There's also stimulation of the manufacture of other agents such as, for example, endothelin thromboxane, thromboxane A2, and also, however, at the same time, explicit microvasculature harm in the myocardium does not appear until after 60 minutes or more of severe ischemia in vivo. At which time there is the reflow in around blood, blood, and the reflow is no longer possible. So in line to this, that ends this particular audio podcast on ischemia and vascular injury as part of this audio podcast in around the role of endogenous opioids in ischemia preconditioning or IPC in humans. This was an audio podcast as part in the series as part of the LabZtorm Effect v.3. This is a Storm Robotics soliloquy and another Storm Robotics production, and hopefully listeners can catch on to the next audio podcast, which will look at aspects in around irreversible ischemic injury, and some other related or regarding aspects as well. Thank you for tuning in.